Military mom murdered. Andrea Washington's death in 2018 came just 2 days after her promotion to Navy Chief Petty Officer. It left her 3 sons without a mother. The immediate suspect now charged with her murder was her boyfriend, Danny Beard. Beard has pleaded not guilty. Tonight, new documents and videos obtained exclusively by First Coast News offer an emotional and troubling look at the night Andrea Washington was murdered, including a police interview with her friend, Marlon Jones. Jones met her when the two were stationed on the same ship at Mayport, and he accompanied Danny Beard to her house to check on her on September 17th. Just a few hours after he discovered his friend's lifeless body, he recounted that discovery to police.
He looked around there first. He looked, and then he got to the end of the couch by the bedroom, and that's what he saw. That's what he saw. And the shock, he turned around, he's like, oh, no, it failed.
Tonight at 11 in an exclusive First Coast News investigation, we're going to have much more of the new information released in this high-profile case, including what police say was a missed opportunity that could have saved her life.